Live watching. Tonight we have Allan Lindrup, and he's going to help us understand green hydrogen. What is it, and what is it? What are the other alternatives to get hydrogen? It's a very powerful chemical or substance, and it could be very helpful in transitioning, but not if we take fossil fuel and turn that into hydrogen. Okay, you ready to go, Alan?
I'm ready to go whenever you feel that we are ready. We
Should,
want to go.
is there some background maybe you'd like to give, your bio or whatever?
Well, all I could say is that I've been interested in environmental issues since I was a young person. I've been involved with a lot of different social justice issues, and I've been on the environmental task force of UUs for Social Justice in the Chicago area since sometime in the 1990s, and
Mm-hmm.
we've put together a lot of educational pieces on a variety of environmental subjects. And I took up the one on green hydrogen,
Mm-hmm.
studied it, and assembled an educational piece on that. And then that was the basis for my offering to present on this topic tonight. And of course, I've created then a PowerPoint to go with it. So,
Okay. Well, I'm in Ames, Iowa. Alan is in Chicago, I believe, or are you in a
yes.
suburb?
No, I'm in Chicago on the southeast side.
Okay. And Sally is in Bergen County, New Jersey. Do you have a city that goes with that, Sally?
That's on Lenape land.
Oh,
Not sure who the native. You're Iowa. I don't know where
right.
Chicago tribes are.
Yeah, and we're probably Meskwaki too. They have a settlement that's about 50 miles from here, and they're unusual in that they lost their land and they went back and bought the land from the American government, and they've managed to expand it and do fairly well. But of course, there's still a lot of prejudice. Norman, where are you?
I'm in Chicago on the north
Okay.
side near Wrigley Field.
Okay. Yeah. My nephew used to live there, and my cousin used to live, I mean, like across the street of it. I'm trying to think what runs on the south side of Wrigley Field, but that's where they were.
Addison,
Addison.
Addison Street.
Yep, that's
Addison. Right.
exactly where he was. Hi, Dick. We're just
Hello.
kind of introducing ourselves. It's a small group tonight.
Mhm.
Do you want to tell who you are?
Well, Dick Burkhart from Seattle. I'm long-term board member of UUJEC and champion of things like the Green New Deal and all-around activist for justice and
No.
sustainability.
Is your degree in physics?
Actually, my PhD is mathematics, but I
Okay.
consider myself a science generalist, including social sciences as well as physical sciences. I
I'm
read
have.
I read across the board, even biology,
Mm-hmm.
economics, psychology, whatever, anthropology. I love that. Besides physics too. Hmm.
I'm having a conversation with one of our state legislators, and he sent out a an email saying they were going to attack the tyranny of vaccines and masks. And I wrote back and I said, well, I think that's another kind of tyranny
Right.
is calling them that. So we've had emails going back and forth.
Yeah, there's just so much politicization of science and corruption too, from political interests, financial interests, and then people will get worked up over everything.
Yep.
Like as soon as it gets into the political arena, people go crazy. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
And like when the Green New Deal came out, that was immediately politicized. And so a lot of the politicians don't even want to use the word anymore.
You know, that might be the best attack we could have on Trump. We could probably get him saying all sorts of wonderful things about this vaccine they've come out with. Uh, which is how he would describe it. And he was the one who really pushed it, even though he's been on record as saying that vaccinations caused his son's autism, which is thoroughly debunked.
Right. It's one of those things. And I read about that. There's the issue of correlation. It's not causation.
Yeah.
Turns out at the same time they usually give the MMR vaccines to children is about the same time that signs of autism show up. So it's even our Robert Kennedy Jr. is victim of that.
It just seems to me that there's no real need to do everything all at once. If you could do it gradually, you would.
Well, my son had a patient who was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, and she got her vaccination and started complaining about how the vaccination caused abdominal pain. Well, 6 months later, she's ready to die, and she's been going around saying how the vaccine has caused abdominal pain. Well, she's probably in denial about cancer, which be easier to blame it on something else because you might live on, but she's not going to. Well, Ellen, I think we should start. This is being recorded on Facebook, so we will get future views.
Okay, so whenever you want to share screen, so my homepage will start up.
Can you not share the screen? I think you should be able to.
I can share mine, so you should be able to hit share screen and.
Okay, well, I brought up my first page of my PowerPoint. Can you see that?
No,
not yet.
Then the host is not allowed sharing screen, and you will see a screen it's a green page with white lettering saying green hydrogen that you should be seeing at this point.
Okay. Alan,
Let's see.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, I just clicked mine. I can see something now.
Right.
But there are a whole bunch of real small pages. I can't read the small pages.
So I'll be clicking on them individually as we get.
Okay.
Okay. So I would just want to say now that the purpose for this choosing this topic is that green hydrogen has the potential to be a significant contributor to the effort around the world to move toward a zero carbon or a net zero carbon economy, in the decades that come. And some of the other topics that will tie in with this are, what is green hydrogen? And then what are some of the hurdles to its coming to widespread use? And then how are things, what's the status of things rolling out? What is the progression? So that's kind of the structure of what I want to talk about.
Alan, could you share your screen? I made you co-host.
Who, I don't know who's Zoom. I think.
Okay, so let me.
That's Dix.
We'll try this again.
I've been trying to figure out what to do here.
Okay.
Okay, I'll do it this way. Okay.
By the end, we'll have all of our technology down.
At least we're all still hearing each other.
Okay.
That looks like it.
Oh, now we got it.
Okay. Okay, so as far as an introduction, I have a couple slides here. Most of you probably know this, but hydrogen is the lightest element. It's less dense than air, and unlike things like oil and other things that where you can have serious leakages and problems environmentally, if hydrogen leaks, basically rises and diffuses. So it's a lot less difficult if there are leakages to have them, in a sense, absorbed by the atmosphere. And at least in our planet, hydrogen generally found in chemical compounds such as hydrocarbons and water. Okay. Now, there are different types of hydrogen. And the one we're particularly concerned about or interested in here is what we call green hydrogen. And because hydrogen can be made by electrolysis, which is basically a process of running electricity through water to split off the hydrogen carbons atoms from oxygen. And to count as green or carbon-free hydrogen, the electricity has to come from renewable sources, the electricity that the electrolyzer uses. So that's the key for green hydrogen. Now, what we currently have is gray hydrogen predominantly, and then most of that is used from the fuel for that is derived from splitting off molecules of hydrogen from natural gas, and that uses a lot of energy to do that splitting off and produces a lot of carbon dioxide in the process. We call that gray hydrogen. Okay, this is basically we have largely. Now, some people talk about potentially having blue hydrogen, and this is particularly people in the natural gas industry probably, and they're interested in still being able to use natural gas on a long-term basis, and they want to be able to use natural gas as the basis for hydrogen, but just saying, oh, well, we'll capture the the carbon dioxide that comes off and we'll store it, and then you'll have a low emission fuel. It's not nearly as good as green hydrogen, and I don't see any purpose for it. So,
Alan, can they capture the oxygen too when they do the electrolyzing?
They might be able to, but I haven't heard anything about that. But I would think that would be possible to do that.
I think the green hydrogen, when you do electrolysis, you capture the hydrogen, but the oxygen just goes into the atmosphere and enriches the atmosphere. But
it's just we have a big need for oxygen these days, so
so that's a big plus there. Instead of carbon dioxide like you get now from the gray hydrogen.
Okay, so now I'm going to talk about 4 different ways in which green hydrogen can potentially help us with our getting to net zero in emissions in the years to decades to come. And the first one I want to talk about is transportation. Transportation is about 16% of the world's carbon emissions. It's a larger share here in the United States. And of the transportation sector, commercial aviation, cargo and cruise ships, and long-haul trucking account for roughly about 1/3 of that transportation sector. And unlike other types of transportation, these forms really can't be electrified because it requires such a weight and volume to the batteries that we require to convert them into electricity transportation. So you have to look for some other kind of fuel and something that's carbon free. Now there are going to be other options that they're going to be looking at, but green hydrogen could very well be the solution. And I want to point out a couple of things. We're talking about one of the things is cargo ships. There is a Norwegian design firm has come up with a design that will use a combination of wind power and green hydrogen to propel cargo ships, and they're planning to have this commercially available by 2024. That's for cargo ships. And as far as commercial airplanes, Airbus has unveiled plans for a zero carbon commercial airline plane that would be propelled by green hydrogen, and they're planning to have this commercially available by 2035. So those are a couple of those things relating to the transportation sector.
Are you going to talk more about the issues with those 2 examples, like aviation and cargo ships?
I mean, you could obviously pop in with questions if you want, and I may or may not be able to answer them.
Yeah, I know on the cargo ships, I think that has a lot of promise, because the issue with hydrogen is very lightweight. It's not heavy, but it takes up a lot of space unless you compress it.
Mm-hmm.
And like with air travel, the problem is you don't have much space, and if you have to compress it to very small space, that means that means the chambers you compress it in have to be very, very strong. It takes a lot of pressure to compress it. You need very strong, probably some version of steel or something that could contain that. And that's hard to do.
For cargo ships, they might be liquefied.
Yeah, and well, that liquefied is the ultimate in containment, in compression. If you do the full, like with natural gas, they often liquefy it. You can do the same thing with hydrogen. That takes a lot of energy, but just to keep it compressed takes, with hydrogen, it's harder because you need a container that won't leak hydrogen. Hydrogen, being the smallest molecule in the universe, can actually leak through the sides of this typical steel, for example. You need very special kinds of materials that will actually contain that. Has to contain the pressure. It also has to contain the hydrogen itself. And that's actually much easier for cargo ships than airplanes.
Okay.
That's why I think there was a difference in timeline. They said the airplanes maybe 2035, because it's going to take a long time to develop, if they can, that kind of containment of that kind of compressed hydrogen as liquid or whatever.
Okay. Well, the second area I want to talk about is heavy industries. Whether in steel making or other type of industries, they have to have very high temperatures in their furnaces, and electricity is not very good at generating those sufficiently high temperatures. And so in steel making, green hydrogen could replace coal that's now used for not only the furnaces, but also for purifying the iron ore. And they've actually, in Sweden, they have a small steel producer named Hybrit, that's Hybrit, that has now made the switch to using green hydrogen and making steel. And the byproduct of that is just water vapor rather than carbon dioxide being released. So that's, example for that part of the economy. And then the third area is improved batteries. We all know that if we're going to be shifting over to renewable energy, and particularly if we're using solar and wind energy, those forms of energy aren't out there all the time. So you got to be able to store the energy generated by renewable energy sources. And so they have them available at all hours of the day, all seasons. And so you're going to have various types of storage. Now, green hydrogen may not be the top choice for all types of storage, perhaps not for utility storage, but green hydrogen fuel cells are one of the options under consideration, particularly for homeowners and other small scale solar generators, which may be able to use them and be able to disconnect from the grid. So it's one of the options out there for storing energy from solar sources. And then a fourth one is simply to replace all this gray hydrogen we're using now. Currently, you've got between 830 and 1,000 million tons of CO2 produced annually from that's using gray hydrogen. And basically, by changing over that, you would be able to reduce a significant source of carbon dioxide in the world's economy.
But that gray hydrogen is coming from natural gas, right?
Yeah, right.
So that would mean that they'd just use the natural gas, right? Why would they bother to make it into hydrogen?
Well, I'm just saying, if the goal was to get the hydrogen, if you're shifted over to green hydrogen, you wouldn't have to have those emissions.
But you're still they're still fracking the gas fields to get it, correct?
No, you are.
No, you wouldn't be. No, because you'd be shifting over to using water as your source, and you'd be using carbon-free electricity to split use electrolyzers to create the green hydrogen. It wouldn't be using natural gas. It wouldn't be green hydrogen.
electricity can convert the methane into hydrogen and carbon dioxide, no? That's gray hydrogen, as I understand it.
We're trying to get away from gray hydrogen.
Okay,
'Cause that raises a lot of emissions of carbon dioxide.
right.
I'm saying to get away from those emissions, if you're
Okay,
able to shift all that over to green hydrogen from gray hydrogen, you get away from those emissions.
okay, so we're, okay,
The methanol, Sally, would not be used to produce hydrogen anymore. It would be used for something else, or is kept in the ground. It's natural gas. And a lot of that natural gas is being, or as methanol is being used to produce this gray hydrogen. That just wouldn't happen anymore.
okay.
Okay.
Your
So-
But it does require then a lot more renewable energy to produce the electricity that then produces the green hydrogen. And that's where the push comes to shove.
Yeah,
Is your question,
using
you
those
know,
renewable
why,
sources.
why are they making gray hydrogen when they could just use methane? Methane's a good source of energy.
Right.
Yeah, but methane's got a bad rep, so they want to say they're green, so they call it hydrogen.
Well,
But I think right now there are certain things where they actually can't use the methane directly. They can't burn the methane directly. They actually need hydrogen for I know all the different examples, but otherwise if you could just burn the methane directly, that would be cheaper. And so they're not using gray hydrogen for a lot of things right now. They may be using some of it for testing the hydrogen economy kinds of things, but that would be unfeasible on the long-term basis. But there are other uses for hydrogen in industry, a whole slew of small things, not big things.
I'm thinking in terms of Dance Camera and Astoria in New York, where Dance Camera, wants to continue, and they announced this hydrogen compatible turbine. So they can use 100% hydrogen when it's available, and meanwhile keep using the gas. And Astoria pretty much doing the same thing with an old kerosene peaking plant. They want to replace it with a gas-fired peaking plant that, someday we'll switch to hydrogen. So, these are my kind of concerns, that this is too easy to be used for greenwashing now and with promises in the future.
Yeah, well, that's what he's talking about, though. If they could switch to green hydrogen in the future, then we're okay. But will that be possible? That depends on a lot more solar panels and wind power, vastly more. And so that's a legitimate question. Yeah.
Okay. So obviously with any transition to any new energy sources, you're always going to have hurdles. And there's a couple of the two bigger ones are cost competitiveness and the distribution issues. And under cost competitiveness, currently we have green hydrogen costing between $2.50 and $4.50 a kilogram. And this is according to Bloomberg, the New Energy Finance, which is BNEF. And that's going to need to fall to below $1 a kilogram to become price competitive with the hydrogen made from fossil fuel. This BNEF is projecting that could be reached potentially by 2030, but that's going to, as Dick was mentioning, that requires a vast increase in clean energy generation and also in a vast expansion in electrolyzer capacity. So
Alan, just another
Yep.
point is I just read that the price of natural gas in the US has tripled in the last year. And if that kind of trend is partly because of what's going on in Europe, they're buying it from us and the Soviets.
there's always factors like that.
There's always but if that trend became long-term and global, then we could hit this green hydrogen threshold much sooner.
Potentially, yeah, right. Because
There's a lot of uncertainties.
as well as one going down, the other one might go way up. And
Yeah,
they might
like-
meet in between, right?
Yeah, like the
Right,
fracking in the US is a boom bust kind of thing for both oil and natural gas. And it will probably start to go bust soon if it hasn't already. It won't keep expanding like it has.
Okay, so then we get to the distribution hurdles. And so you either got to compress it a lot, as Dick was mentioning, to get through a pipeline, or chill to a liquid state, particularly if you're going to transport it by ship. And this, it's not only a process that's, takes some effort, but it adds to some cost for the distribution, which natural gas doesn't have to go through. So if you're talking about price comparison, that's an issue there. But now, as far as pipelines to move it through, I mean, obviously in places like Europe, they're building a whole new pipelines for green hydrogen, but there is a possibility to repurpose natural gas pipelines, but to do so, they're going to have to be strengthened a lot, as was mentioned. And what they have considers they have these automated, what they call pigs, that go through pipelines to look for leaks and things like this. They're thinking if they could use those, go through and put out, they'd be spraying on the insides of the pipelines, various things to strengthen the pipelines, make them strong enough for green hydrogen to go through. We'll see if that works, but that's something that's been being discussed as a way to strengthen current natural gas pipelines to make them so they can be switched to for green hydrogen. So that's a possibility, but they can also build out new pipelines to whatever specifications they need to maintain and contain the hydrogen adequately.
Yeah, I think that's something that could be possible, but to understand the way this ordinary steel becomes brittle is that the hydrogen molecules can actually move. They're so small, they can actually maneuver into the steel, and then they can actually interact. There can actually be a chemical reaction with some of the steel, just think of how iron rusts, for example. The same kind of thing could happen here. The hydrogen goes in and there's a chemical reaction with some of the steel, and that gives you a different compound that's weaker and eventually could crack. But if you line the piping, I know I had that recently done with my sewer. We came in and they said, well, we're not going to take out the old sewer. We're just going to put a lining in it. You see, that's more stronger, more recent, and a liquid that would work better. That does have promise. I don't know how, I doubt if it's state of the art yet. It may have a long ways to go to be successful, but that does have promise.
Yeah, one of the concerns with the old nuclear reactors trying to extend their life is the same thing with metal and brittle being more vulnerable than the new stuff.
Right.
Okay, I'm going to turn a little bit to what we call rolling out green hydrogen. Europe has the lead on this, and the European Union is set the most ambitious goals with building electrolyzers with the capacity for converting 40 gigawatts of renewable energy into green hydrogen by 2030. And basically, the European Union has come up with what they call its Green Deal. I don't know if they call it their equivalent to our Green New Deal, but it's their Green Deal. And green hydrogen is a central component of this Green Deal plan. Envisions having a $560 billion of public and private investments by 2050 in the hope of kickstarting a global green hydrogen market. And Germany has declared that the green hydrogen will play a central role in transforming its industrial base as it moves towards a zero carbon emissions by 2045. Now, as far as some examples of other places, South Korea is building fueling and other infrastructure in 6 cities where its hope is to make green hydrogen the main energy source by 2025. You got Australia investing $214 million in 4 green hydrogen hubs with 26 gigawatts of capacity. And here in the US, Biden administration has set a goal of reducing the cost of green hydrogen by 80% by 2030, which if natural gas goes up, that might be enough. Okay. And then cost competitiveness. Again, we go back to this Bloomberg New Energy Finance source. They had a study, and that they found that the cost of electricity will account for the majority of the costs of producing green hydrogen by 2030, with electrolyzer-related costs accounting for the rest. And in their study, they had 28 major countries that they studied, and they found that green hydrogen should outcompete regular hydrogen made from natural gas by 2050 in all of these 28 countries, and would even cost less than natural gas on an energy equivalent basis in 15 of the 28 countries. So it's got a trend for being certainly cost competitive. And with that, then you get, again, these other hurdles of, distribution, everything that they have to come up with good solutions to, but they're working on it, and we hope they will be successful, because it certainly has the potential to be quite helpful in a number of the elements, whether it's transportation or heavy industry, et cetera, for helping us with getting to a net zero economy on a worldwide basis. So that's basically what I had to share with you. And I'm going to basically open it up for, I guess, additional discussion and questions and whatever. And that's where I'm at.
I just had one thought. My understanding is that the hydrogen fuel cells use compressed hydrogen, but not compressed to the point of being liquefied. And that's why there actually are existing hydrogen fuel cells, which have been tested for quite a few years now. Mm-hmm. Things like, I remember like 10, 15 years ago, they were testing hydrogen fuel cells in buses.
Yeah.
And things like that. And they would seem to be practical in maybe big trucks and some other big, not so much cars. Again, it takes more, if you don't compress it as to a liquid form, it's going to take a lot more space. If you just compress it part way, it's going to take a lot of space. It's lightweight, but a lot of space. So you need more space. And in buildings also, in many buildings, you could potentially have hydrogen fuel cells because you have plenty of space in buildings. But I know they ran into a lot of practical problems with those hydrogen fuel cells. They sounded good in theory. I can't remember what all the practical problems are. But so I guess there's no guarantees here.
Right. There's technical issues they have to work on, right?
Yeah,
and with a lot of technologies. Right.
Yeah, some of them may take decades to resolve, and some of them maybe tomorrow. We just don't know. Yeah.
Is it safe?
Well, no, that's another issue. The hydrogen, as you pointed out earlier, if you get a slow leak, it just goes into the atmosphere. But if it's under high pressure, like liquid or very high pressure, not even liquid, but just high pressure, like a hydrogen fuel cell, and suppose you had an accident, say in a bus that was using hydrogen fuel cells, and the fuel cell was ruptured, and that compressed hydrogen suddenly was released, there would probably be a spark, and it would have a huge flash, and that's what happened to the Hindenburg or something like that, And so there's real danger in accidents that hydrogen could give you a huge flash that would burn everything close by and then set off a bigger fire.
I can't help but think of hydrogen bombs, so that's why I asked.
No, that wouldn't be like hydrogen bombs at all. It'd be a totally different process. But there is a real danger there that's long been recognized. That how do you keep it, like in any kind of, say, vehicle, how do you stop it from having an accident that might do that to the vehicle? I mean, it's even if it doesn't happen in normal operations, reality is the accidents happen. Yeah. And when accidents happen, you'll probably get a spark too, you see.
Yeah. That's why for vehicles, I think the long haul trucks would be the main areas where makes sense, because most of the other things like buses, smaller trucks, etc., their electricity is probably the more logical option for shifting them over to.
And actually, what a lot of people are looking at now is like lithium-ion type batteries for, short haul, like, deliveries around the city and things
Oh,
like
yeah,
that.
sure, right. Yeah, I wasn't suggesting that
And then
anything except for long haul as far as land transportation.
and then for intermediate haul, maybe something like the hydrogen fuel cell, if they can solve some of these problems. And then for the longer haul, go to trains, trains that are powered by electricity, overhead wires, and you can hook up just like with ships overseas, you can hook up trains with a lot of containers on them.
Yeah.
And that would actually be far more efficient for
Yeah,
long
the
haul.
question there is
instead of
always
long-haul trucking.
building out the networks for, and whether various distribution networks and are satisfied with transferring it to a train and then back to trucks at the other area. So it all depends on what your networks are. Yeah,
They call that
trucks have a little more flexibility, and that's why it might be useful.
it's just called solutionary rail, but right now a lot of trucks that go into a port and they just pick up containers with big trains and put them on the backs of trucks. And you could do that. You still put them on the backs of trucks. You just put them right on train cars and go to their destinations and have trains there, which take them off the train cars and put them into local trucks or whatever it is like that.
In Boston, when you go to the airport and you take the Silver Line, it's diesel for part of it, and then you go through a tunnel, and they hook up to power lines, and when they're in an enclosed space, it's all done electrically. And I had just read that Germany's experimenting with having long-haul trucks be electrified, and they have power lines, and I think they've only done 5 or 10 miles of it,
Right.
but they found it did work pretty well.
Right, and that's another solution right there, but that could be intermediate, because actually the long haul trains are much more efficient if you can use the long haul trains. But if you do, in the situation where you can't build the long haul trains or whatever, long haul trucks with overhead wires for a section can help out also. Yeah, it's actually being tested in Germany, I read.
There was a special, I don't know if it was a webinar, talking about trucking and how everything in our houses comes by truck. There's nothing, you can't look at anything in your house that doesn't come by a truck. And that they're mostly run by diesel, and diesel is going out soon. So it does seem like finding a solution for trucking is really important. Otherwise, we're all going to have to be local about everything. You can't even get food there if you can't get decent trucking.
But even
I hate
locally,
to think of it, I can't stand going on the freeway anymore. It's just all trucks. But we're going to have to change our whole economy if we can't figure it out.
That's right.
Well, we do have to change our whole, I mean, we're just, pushing too much crap all over too many places.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
agree with you, but I don't think the most of the country agrees with us.
Yeah. Well, we're talking not just about the United States, we're talking about the world economy. So there are going to be areas, these solutions, for long haul trucks, you're talking about Africa, you're talking about, maybe Soviet Union or Russia nowadays, or other places. They may not always have the other options with the rail or the X or Y, and there's going to be long haul trucking, and it's not going to, if you want to get away from the current carbon fuels, you're going to have to come up with a different type of fuel. And
You're gonna
hydrogen
also
is a
have
good
to use
possibility.
energy, period, the end. We can't just keep shipping the dough to Mexico to make the cookies to ship them back to the United States.
Right.
You gotta make
Agreed.
cookies where you bake the dough.
Relocalization.
Local economy.
Right. But it's unlikely it will be totally local. Maybe impossible.
No,
Basically.
Not,
But you can, even if you relocalize halfway, that would be incredible, absolutely incredible.
But it's sooner than anybody seems to be saying.
there is a campaign I put in the chat, Ship It Zero, which is asking some of the big corporate shippers, Target and the retail shippers, to make a commitment to, zero emission cargo shipping, to really get some pushes for that. And whether it's hydrogen or electric or whatever, I think that's a good step forward. Got to ask corporations to do some stuff.
But it bothers me when this is something for individual companies to do, because this, as Lucy says, it's going to be a game changer. You can't say one company can do it and another company. It's got to be the whole system is going to change to make it possible. Otherwise, they'll make promises they can't keep. That's the reality of it.
Yes and no, because obviously, ultimately, you do need the entire system to change.
Yeah,
but you get some of the bigger players to make the request, it's more likely to be heard. We've all seen the Represent Us video of how, no matter what we want, it's only got a 30% chance of getting enacted, unless you're in one of the 1% folks, and then maybe they'll listen to you. So,
what is the timeline on getting to safe hydrogen? Are they making a prediction on timeline for actually having it ready to use?
No.
I think too many unknowns. Like I read some of the things on that blue hydrogen, and that the natural gas industry is, pushing. And there were a couple of studies and whatnot, but it was all extremely vague and assuming various things would happen. And there are a lot of assumptions in, like with this steel becoming brittle and whatnot. Now, there are a lot of real serious problems to solve there. And you can project 2035, but that may not happen, or may happen sooner. We don't know. We don't know when these breakthroughs will happen, or how soon they'll happen, or if they'll happen.
Okay.
And some of the activists feel that the corporations are pushing these various hydrogen solutions to stave off being forced to really electrify and we'll build this gas plant so that someday it can be hydrogen, but meanwhile we'll keep putting out the gas.
Yeah. And that's probably what will happen in the short run. You can say somebody will do, like in Germany, the overhead wires and the trucking, and somebody else will do hydrogen fuel cells in trucking or shipping. And those will all just be sort of trial runs, or just little projects. And none of those will scale up until we transform the whole industry, basically.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens this winter. We just saw an announcement by one of our energy companies that natural gas will be going up, I think it's 45 to 90% over last year's rates. Is this going to make people clamor for renewable energy, or to explore and do more fracking and everything else? That it's a political problem if people decide they want to go cheap and we just need to frack and get more of it.
And for some of us, okay, go ahead, Lucy. I've said too much.
I just wonder who is behind the development. Are the Exxons taking on trying to deal with the hydrogen, or is it completely separate companies?
Shell
is.
Shell. That's no improvement.
No. I mean, is there a hydrogen industry as opposed to an oil industry, or are they trying to take it on now, the oil industry?
They're all part of the same thing now. See, right now, almost all the hydrogen is gray hydrogen that comes from methanol. That means fossil fuel company. So these big companies are all doing all of it now.
That's why they're pushing blue hydrogen, because they want to still have it come from natural gas.
Right. Yeah.
They want to be the source.
Okay.
Well, temporarily they could use the gray hydrogen to get the technology going for operating cars or trucks, while we figure out how to mass produce green hydrogen.
Yeah, and that's probably what happened on a small scale. You can use gray hydrogen to develop some of this, but then where are you going to get the green hydrogen and scale? That's the real big thing. Like they're talking now about having these wind farms off the east coast of the United States. That's what Biden's plan. And that's going to be necessary. And there's going to be a lot of resistance to that by wealthy homeowners. So these things aren't going to be so easy, you see.
The Kennedy's.
Communities, yeah, off Cape Cod. I mean, they've already, I think there are a few there, but a lot of that was stopped already by wealthy families on Cape Cod.
We have that situation in New Jersey. There's a bunch of plans, and apparently some of the wealthy homeowners that are objecting. There are a few public hearings coming up in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, so there's no free lunch here.
Yeah, but aesthetics can change. I mean, when they
Yeah.
put up the Eiffel Tower, all of France and Paris were scandalized to have that hideous thing, and then it turns out they really like it.
And
Yeah,
frankly,
that's, and a lot of it's going to come from the economics. If when the natural gas becomes a lot more expensive, not just temporarily, but permanently, and the same with oil and the same with coal, that will make a huge change in the mentality also.
also, when the wind turbines went up in Atlantic County, the side of the regatta that overlooked them, people were asking for those rooms. They wanted to watch the turbines. So, you never know.
In Iowa, when we go traveling now, there are wind turbines everywhere. And we really look at them and we're just excited to see them. They're not hideous on the landscape one bit, but
I took the train from Chicago to New Orleans for GA in 2017, and it was a delight to look out the window and see turbines here and there.
Right.
and they have figured out a solution for the birds. You paint one of the three propellers. I'm not thinking of the right word. Vanes. You paint one of them like black, and then the birds can spot them, and they're diverted to go around them. They know that they know what's going on. When they're all the same color, it's just a blur to them, and they run into them.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Heaven forbid we have to get rid of everything that birds die from. They fly into the farmhouse windows all the time.
Right.
Well, you can put a little stickers on the windows too, so that they recognize that. I know urban windows have that problem as well.
Yeah, and it's probably different with different birds too.
Yeah, well, the cardinals really, the male cardinals really hate what they see in the reflection. They're very territorial, and we have one that we thought it should have had brain damage because it ran into our windows 10 times a day and every day, year round.
Another cardinal.
So fighting
I
this
missed
out.
the first part of the talk, but I'm curious about airplanes. Because they use so much fuel. Is that
Well, that's one of the parts of the transportation sector is very important, where green hydrogen can potentially help. And Airbus has made commitment to try to develop a zero carbon commercial airplane using green hydrogen at the projected rollout of 2035. So,
that's
Well,
From what I've heard, that's
And
going
to
to require the liquefied hydrogen, and it doesn't look like you're ever going to get a 747 cargo plane run that way, because most of the plane itself would have to be hydrogen for long distances. What they're thinking of now is short haul planes, like very short haul regional planes might be able to do this, but I think that's going to take a very long period of development to get very far.
The one way we're getting Iowa politicians on it is that they're mixing ethanol with the jet fuel, and it seems to reduce emissions allegedly like I think it's 30%, but I could be off on that. But you're not going to get Iowa politicians to sign on to electric cars. They're like, actually, in Iowa they charge us more for our registration for our hybrid, because we're not supporting road taxes, which in a way is kind of understandable, but they should just charge everybody more for road taxes. And if you want to use gasoline, be our guest, just pay more taxes.
Right.
yeah.
But they're not doing that. They're trying to penalize and slow down
And also, there's
electric cars.
an energy penalty with the ethanol. Ethanol is not as energy dense as like ordinary aviation fuel or any other kind of fuel. Like even in cars, we put in with gasoline.
No.
That gasoline, it requires more fuel to run the car when part of it is ethanol. And
Yeah.
so
and to
the ethanol doesn't pay its way in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. It's
And-
maybe a net loser.
the only reason to use ethanol is that it does help with some air pollution. It reduces smog or something, but as far as producing it, you get like 2% more energy by turning fossil fuels and fossil fertilizers into corn, and then taking that and turning it back into fuel. I mean, it's a very inefficient way to make fuel.
In fact, some analyses say it's actually a negative
Sugar
thing
back
for
and forth
energy.
for the tariffs to make the ethanol. So, international trade insanity goes on.
But of course, it would take a big political updoing or undoing to get it out, get rid of it, because 50% of our corn goes into ethanol,
Right.
and we would have a major glut of corn if we stopped doing it. But if we prohibited fertilizers and pesticides, then we would probably have I don't think we'd be short, but it would bring it in line pretty quickly.
Or you could feed the world instead of feeding the ethanol.
The problem with what we've raised, and I just read this fairly recently, and it had occurred to us, we talk about feeding the world, but the reality is that we feed the rich of the world because it's turned into meat.
Right.
And the rich are eating the meat. So we're not really doing much for the average Joe in starvation.
When we're discussing natural gas prices and what happens when they go up, well, those of us, at least me, I can absorb a lot of the cost. There are people who don't have the luxury of absorbing it or not, and they really need something to heat themselves, and of course they can afford.
Right.
Yeah.
I
That's
think
going
we're going
to
to learn a lot this winter with just what's happening with the prices and everything. It's going to be interesting.
Lucy, what kind of furnace do you have?
Mine's all electric. Everything's electric.
Okay.
It's whatever.
Is it geothermal? Is it
Well,
geothermal or?
the development has geothermal, but my part of the development doesn't. We're supposed
Okay.
to do solar, but I don't need it. My house is so thick that I barely need to turn the heat on or the air. I can't think of the name of what I've got.
It's not a heat pump?
Yeah, a heat pump.
Okay.
yeah, they're very
That works pretty well in most climates. I was just a little too cold in the wintertime. Heat pumps don't do very well when you have 0 and sub-zero temperatures.
But
The only
also,
thing I don't get is why the apparatus is so high when hot air rises. It doesn't make any sense to me that it's on the top of the wall instead of the bottom. But anyway,
Is the cold air return off the floor?
no, I don't think so. There's no vent.
There are no vents near the floor?
No.
Oh, okay.
I'm on a UUJC website.
Okay, so, and it's going to be gone for a while.
I might be able to join later.
I also found an interesting technology that I don't know a lot about: cryogenic energy storage. They apparently use a thermodynamic cycle to liquefy air that they can then store for a fairly long period of time. And when they gasify it, it expands like 700 times, and they can create electricity and so forth.
Hmm.
Well, that's just like what happens with the
More
liquefied
about it, I don't know how real
or
it is.
liquefied hydrogen. You can do any kind of gas.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've taken up the hour. Do we have more we want to talk about? I don't mean to cut off anybody, but we UUJEC people have kind of taken over the conversation.
Well, I wonder if there was an issue with getting on.
I'm sorry. It's,
We had
It did get recorded, right? Because I would like to.
they
hear
are
it anyway.
recorded, yeah. Yeah, if you think this was bad, last night at the Commission on Social Witness, somehow or another our Zoom got very corrupted, and all sorts of weird things were happening. Like my chat disappeared. None of the tools worked on the toolbar, and I was being muted and couldn't get back on. I abandoned this computer and went to another one, and it started doing the same thing there too. I don't know. It's never happened to me. I think it's something to do with whoever's Zoom it was, but
No, no,
it was distraughting.
The UUE board I went to had a useful Zoom that worked well.
and
And
I
they have
think
meetings.
our-
Oh, you did. Okay. Yeah, I knew you went to the UUA board.
Yeah.
Well, Alan, thank you for volunteering to do this. This will be on our Facebook page, and I can assure you we will have more views in the upcoming days and weeks. So
Okay.
thank you very much.
Yeah, and keep us updated. It would be good in the webpage to have a place where we could update things like hydrogen to see what's,
Yep.
if something new, is discovered,
Okay,
or the timeline gets faster or whatever. It would be good.
I'm trying to figure out where this doesn't look right. Okay, I want to just have the contact. Let's see here. Nope, this isn't it. Well, no, it should be
yeah,
this one. It's
it's in a
here.
row.
Here it is. Okay. Okay. Now, sorry, it always takes me a second to figure this out. Okay. Sure. This is how to find us.
Yes.
And this is our web page and our Facebook page. I don't know why I don't know if
That's
anybody
Twitter.
here Twitters. And then this is Jane's address. That's our treasurer. Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Alan.
You're welcome. Okay.
Great topic.
Looks like I can't.
We thought it was, I thought it was worth
It is.
doing something about and sharing, and it seemed like something that was a potential significant contributor to a solution. Again, there are challenges, but it certainly has a potential.
Yeah,
I think we'll want to revisit it in future years.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it keeps getting mentioned as if it were, we're going to solve it, and it's good to know what the real facts are.
I'm skeptical of any magic bullet, let's put it that way.
Yeah. The magic bullet is to use less.
Right. That's the magic bullet.
That is the magic.
Right.
Thank you. Good night.